What is up, everybody? Welcome to another month wrap-up video where I talk about all of the brand new release films I saw last month, which would be June of 2025. We are thick in the summer movie season, and I was able to check out 8 brand new movies. And while it's certainly an interesting bunch of movies, all of them, all 8 of them, even my bottom one, I would give a positive review for, so not a bad month. As always, let me know what you guys thought about these movies down in the comment section below. Add in whichever movies you watched that maybe I missed. Give me some suggestions. I know Marshmallow was one that was going around. A lot of people were buzzing about. I just honestly ran out of time to be able to check it out. So if I need to make that a priority before I get knee deep into July, let me know. But as far as the movies that I was able to check out, my number 8, the one that I liked the least in the month of June, is actually the most recent one that I saw, which is Megan 2.0. Now, I was a fan of the first Megan, casual fan. I didn't dislike it. I didn't go nuts about it, but it was just a little Gen Z answer to Chucky in my mind. This is like the new version of the killer doll. And while it was certainly softened, it was much more entry-level horror than any of the Child's Play movies were ever intended to be. I enjoyed it good enough, enjoyed it even more after I showed it to my youngest daughter especially, and she really loved Megan. She loved Chucky, and then Megan, I think, is even more so high on her little horror icon list. So I was looking forward to checking out the second film and actually being able to take her to the theater to see this new one. And then I saw that they decided to change directions and get away from the little bit of horror slasher tone they had in the original and go full bore Terminator 2 route and just sci-fi action spy movie. And when we all saw the film, I gotta be honest, it was total mixed bag. It's a movie that I thought was entertaining enough. I really didn't have a whole lot of expectations or a whole lot of stock put into Megan. I was just taking my girls out to go and have a good time with them. They seemed to enjoy it good enough, although my youngest daughter definitely was fidgeting and losing a lot of interest in the middle hour of the film because it is entirely too long and way too exposition heavy and so much espionage and overcomplicated plot. But beyond all of that, look, this is a movie that you're either going to love or you're going to hate. You're either going to enjoy the very silly, ridiculous, campy direction that they decided to take this and enjoy it for all its ridiculousness, or you're going to really be upset that they have now abandoned the horror or the slasher subgenre with this one, and Megan is not really a horror icon anymore. And who knows what they're going to do with the third film, but the box office doesn't lie. This movie has made so far, I think it was like a third, maybe even a quarter of what the original film made in the opening weekend, and that's only going to decrease being that it's in a busy summer season. So I think in hindsight, they made a mistake going that direction and not continuing to go in that horror route. But nonetheless, as somebody who is just a very unenthusiastic, casual fan of the first Megan 2.0, not as good as the first one, but gave me just enough to walk out saying, yeah, check it out. Coming in at number 7 is going to be Predator: Killer of Killers. This is an animated film that was released, I believe, exclusively on Hulu. I don't believe it went to theaters. They actually debuted this whenever I was in LA, so I was very late to the party on this one. But it's essentially like an anthology movie where you have a bunch of different warriors throughout history, and there's these individual little predators that are trying to take them on. So you have a Viking, you have a samurai, you have a World War II pilot, maybe it was a World War I pilot, I can't remember. And then they all kind of converge together in what I guess would be the 4th act of the movie in this way to kind of bring all these stories together for the Predator world. And what I liked about it is that, like a lot of people, ever since like maybe the last 2 or 3 films, I don't know if it was Predators or if it was Prey that made a lot of people talk about it more, but a lot of us who are Predator fans have been saying, it'd be really cool if you just did one-offs and just have like a Predator in feudal Japan and have a Predator during World War I and, have a Predator during the Viking era or something like that. And just put these different warriors in these different times and tell a story very much like Prey, where you have a Predator versus the Native Americans, but in these different, themes and eras throughout time. And you could just milk that concept for 4 or 5 movies. And as long as you direct them and write them really well, we're going to keep watching them. And this is kind of their answer to that. As you guys know, I'm not really a big animation guy. As great as they are, I don't know what it is. There's just something about me that I always will prefer live action over animation. But what I liked about it was that you got these little snapshots into what that concept could look like, having a Predator versus a Viking and then a samurai. I thought that the animation style was pretty cool. It didn't go too anime style, which tends to really turn me off, so that was interesting. There was a really interesting depth of field to it that was almost like a comic book panel, which was really cool. I enjoyed the way that the stories came together in, like I said, I guess the fourth act of the movie, where all three of these warriors kind of come together and have to face off. I think that the look of the Predators themselves was pretty cool and translated to animation really well. And I'm glad they kept it hard R. It is a bloody, gory animated film. And if they had dumbed it down to PG-13, I think I wouldn't have had any interest in checking this out at all. What I didn't necessarily love about it, aside from me just being that grumpy get off my lawn guy about animation, is that, one, I hope they didn't just like waste the potential of this concept on just shoving all these ideas into an animated film. I do think there's still a hunger out there to see live action versions of these types of battles. And so I'm a little worried that this is what we're going to get as far as this, and they're never going to pursue trying to do like a live action feudal Japan type Predator movie. But time will tell with that one. The other side of it is that it definitely obeys by cartoon rules, where the human characters are doing things that are wildly unrealistic, and the physics of the world is incredibly exaggerated, and it's just very over the top and asinine as far as the grounded sort of rules of the live action films. And I wish they would have kept a little bit closer to that, because to me that kind of breaks some of the reality of this being in the same universe as the other films, which, not to spoil anything, the final shot of this animated film very canonically is saying, yeah, this is the same exact world as other characters that you have seen. And to me, that just doesn't work. I mean, when you got like even just the World War II segment where the guy's dangling out of the plane and you're doing like little slingshot moves with bombs, and some of the nature of the fourth act where they're all together on this Predator world, it was just a little too much for me. Of course, when you're doing animation, you kind of want to do things that you're not able to do in live action and exaggerate the world a bit. So maybe I'll be on an island with that one. But for me, if this is going to be canonical, you have to obey by the rules of the other films, and they absolutely do not. But it was cool. It was a good time. It's not necessarily something I would rewatch, but I would watch a sequel, which I think they intend on doing. So bring it on. Coming at number 6, we have How to Train Your Dragon. Now, I have only ever watched these movies once, but I really enjoy that animated trilogy. For somebody who just got done saying I don't really get into animation much, those were really enjoyable films. Very wholesome, great characters, balancing really cool animation with like a nice little sweet message, and the relationship between Toothless and Hiccup. So when they said they were going to do a live action remake of this one, I actually was more interested in this than pretty much anything that Disney has done, because to me, How to Train Your Dragon, that's a concept where I could see it being really cool in live action. It's still too soon, and I'm very much burnt out on this whole let's do a live action remake of an animated film craze that we've been in for like the last 8 years. But this was one I was curious about. And what I will say is that if you're a fan of the animated film, you might like this one, as long as you don't walk in expecting it to be very different, because it's not. It's almost the exact same film. I think the casting was done well. Some of it's transferred over, like Gerard Butler. Other ones were recast, obviously. The characters, as far as the costume design and the set design of this Viking island and the look of the dragons was all done really well. So it did translate very well to live action CGI, as I thought that it would. For me, it's just, I guess I'm just numb to these movies. Like, we all went out as a family. Everybody had a good time. We enjoyed it. I don't think I would ever watch it again. It's just, this was good. This was well done. That was fun for a night out. But there's just been so many of these remakes of animated films just getting pumped out, 1 or 2 a year, that I'm just kind of, I'm burnt out on them. Even the really great ones don't really hit me very much, because I've sat through a dozen of them in the last couple of years. I'm just bored with them. I'm absolutely bored with them. So if you're like me and you're burnt out, maybe just watch this at home whenever it comes to streaming. If you're somebody who just loves this franchise, you want to see a live action version, or you haven't subjected yourself to a lot of the Disney remakes and you still got a lot of gas left in the tank, check this one out, because it's definitely one of the better ones. Coming at number 5 is going to be Mike Flanagan's new film, Life of Chuck. And I actually intended on doing a review of this one, but the timing of it just unfortunately didn't work out. I was able to go and check out a very early screening of this when I was in LA for Monsterpalooza, where Mike Flanagan and Chiwetel Ejiofor and Tom Hiddleston were actually going to be in attendance to do a post-screening Q&A. So I saw this about a week or two before it was released to the public, but then I just had so much content and so many different things to cover, there was just no room for Chuck. And what I'll say about this film is that it's going to hit everybody a little differently. The theme of the movie in regard to the value of life and, mourning people and how you can affect people in very ways that you don't even realize just by walking down the street and starting to dance with somebody. It's a really wholesome and a very relatable theme that, depending on your relationship with losing family members or anything like that, you're going to be hit harder by the film's message than others. I luckily have not really had a whole lot of experiences that this film is kind of conveying, so it did not hit me on an emotional level like it did some of my friends that I saw it with. But what I will tell you is that this is a very different type of film from Mike Flanagan. It's not horror whatsoever, even though it is a Stephen King short story he's adapting. It's a film where you have these three very distinct acts that are tonally completely different. They focus on a completely different main character, essentially. And the film is also told backwards. And what all three of these acts essentially add up is just talking about the impact from this guy, Chuck, this seemingly nobody named Chuck, and how all of us have value. And the ways that we can positively impact others and, leave a lasting impression, even if it feels like we have lived a very mundane type of life. And so it's a really, really well done story that's very peculiar in the way that it's told, and it's not going to work for everybody. It didn't really work for me on first watch. It's a movie I kind of had to marinate on for a while to really fully appreciate. I think that, unfortunately, the way the movie's structured, it gets less interesting as it goes on. Like, the most intriguing part of the movie is what starts it, and then it kind of gets more mundane as it goes on, and that's not going to work for everybody. I've also found it very peculiar that it's heavily marketed as Tom Hiddleston's film when he is a very small piece of it. Like, I've even heard a lot of early Oscar buzz for him. Like, this is the role of Tom Hiddleston's life, and he just carries the movie on his shoulders. He's very good for the sequence that he's in. But there is a younger version of Chuck, a child version of Chuck, who is significantly more the star of this film that's getting completely overlooked. So I found that was odd. Even Chiwetel Ejiofor has more screen time and more presence in the film than Tom Hiddleston. So I don't know. It's a movie that's it's odd to discuss. Like, I didn't love it, but I certainly did like it. It was something that I'm glad that I saw. I would be very interested to talk about it with other people who have saw it, because we're all going to get different things out of it. I'm glad to see Mike Flanagan do something different like this that was very clearly a passion project that I don't think him or anybody involved with it ever thought was going to be like this box office success or anything, and it won't. It was very, very quietly released to limited theaters, but it's a story that I think will impact a lot of people in a good way. And a lot of people will walk out having some very strong emotions, like my buddy Chuck did whenever we saw this. Interesting how Chuck was affected by the life of Chuck. But yeah, check it out if you're a Mike Flanagan fan. Go in with modest expectations. Don't walk in with a lot of Mike Flanagan baggage, because it's a very different type of movie. And just experience the story and see how it affects you. It's one of those type of films that it just makes for very interesting conversation. So let's have some of that conversation down below if you have seen it. Coming in at number 4 is going to be 28 Years Later. And my God, was this thing just an absolute magnet for toxicity with film discourse. Jesus Christ. So 28 Years Later was my number 1 most anticipated film of the year. I absolutely love 28 Days Later. It is one of, basically in competition for my number 1 favorite zombie film of all time. I put it in quotations because you still got the actually motherfuckers out there, even though they say zombie in 28 Years Later. Ha ha ha! Canonized, bitch. Anyway, I love 28 Days Later. 28 Weeks Later, despite a lot of people being down on that film, I love that one as well. So I was really anticipating seeing what they were going to finally do, coming back to this franchise, getting the original creative team back. And a lot like Life of Chuck, it's a movie that I don't know, I still am kind of sitting on it. There's things about it that I kind of like the fact that it's still lingering in my mind, but at the same time, there's a frustration there of just how bizarre some of the choices were. You have a story here that's essentially like a coming-of-age rite of passage story for this young kid, Spike, going out into this, 28 years after this rage virus has absolutely decimated the UK, going out into that world and essentially becoming a man. and the different ways that manifests itself with his relationship with his father, his relationship with his mother. You have Ralph Fiennes in there as a very bizarre character. And there's so many things about the film that I thought was great. I love the way that it was shot. I love the way that they were able to achieve that very gritty, raw look of the first film while still having it look good and not look like it was shot through a fucking milk carton like 28 Days Later. I really appreciate a lot of the performances. Like across the board, the performances are great. The bit of gore that we do get, like skulls getting ripped out of people's bodies and stuff, was gnarly and was awesome. I think that some of the ways that they advance the infected or the zombies, whatever you want to call them, was interesting. There's other ways that, to me, doesn't really make logical sense, and I'm hoping the next movie or the next two movies start to answer some of those questions. But there's just a lot of very peculiar creative decisions here that were very deliberately made. It wasn't like they screwed up. It was just, this was a choice they made. The editing style, having a lot of random B-roll thrown in there from old like 60s movies. I think it was Henry V. The way that they very distinctly, tonally separated the three acts, like to where they feel like three different movies and three different stories. Some of the creative decisions involved with, a baby that enters the story. Certainly the way that the movie ends. It's of course not what I expected, and there's a disappointment with that. Sometimes that's a good thing if they give you something that you weren't expecting in a good way. I would not say that this is one of those examples for me, but it's peculiar. It's peculiar in an interesting way, and it did leave me where I was disappointed that this was not a 5 out of 5 knock out of the park type experience that I was hoping it was going to be. But I'm still intrigued and I'm still invested to check out the second film. I'll be there day one. So, we're back in the world. It was a bit of a slippery re-entrance, but 28 years later, I'd say let me know your thoughts, but I think I've gotten everybody's thoughts over the last couple of weeks. It's been wild. Coming at number 3, we have Ballerina from the world of John Wick, whatever the fuck it's called. And this is the spin-off movie from the John Wick universe where you have Ana de Armas in here as the side character on a path for revenge, and she eventually crosses paths with John Wick in the third act. And what I will say is that for a film that is a spin-off from what I would say is the premier action franchise of the last 10 years, it definitely holds its own. To me, if I was to rank all 5 of the films, this would either be in last or it would be right above my last one, but I still really like all 5 films, so kind of take that with a grain of salt. I think that Ana de Armas is great in the lead role, very physically capable. She's a great actress. All the action is done very well. I think it actually gets more intense as the movie goes on, which is a good path to take. This has, probably 1 or 2 of the more standout sequences in the entire franchise, which is a good thing to say. This is not like a spin-off that's a half measure from the other movies. It holds its own as far as the action goes. As far as the story, though, that's where it kind of let me down. It's a very basic revenge story that I don't think we really get a whole lot of interesting details. I'm not very invested in the actual narrative being told here. I'm just here to see her kick the shit out of other people, which you can kind of say for the John Wick films, but I think where the John Wick films succeed over this film is they're much better at building lore and fleshing out the world and kind of giving us narrative in that form and giving us really interesting side characters in each one of these films that kind of give every chapter its own distinct flavor. I think that's missing from Ballerina, which makes the main narrative of the movie stand out more as kind of a flat, disappointing element. But if you go to the John Wick films just to watch ass kickery, Ballerina has some really good ass kickery. So I definitely want to see more in this universe, whether John Wick's there or not. Coming in at number 2 for me is going to be Dangerous Animals. And this, I said in my review, is now the 3rd shark movie in history that I would say I am a fan of. Before this, I have only ever been a fan of course, the original Jaws, one of the best movies of all time, and Deep Blue Sea, which I've always had a lot of guilty pleasure for, a lot of nostalgia for. Saw that one in the theaters, always been a fan. Every other shark movie I've watched, I just never been a fan of. I just don't think they're done very well. The more CG they get, the worse that they are in my mind, which unfortunately is just the nature of the beast. You're never going to go back and have them try to do what they did in the original Jaws. And Dangerous Animals, I think, succeeds because, it's a shark movie, but only kinda. It's much more of a serial killer movie than a shark film, but sharks is definitely, the flavor of the entire thing. You have Jai Courtney, who I never cared for when he first came onto the scene, but I've really enjoyed him in roles where he's able to just kind of chew the scenery, and this is one of them, where he's a serial killer who uses sharks as his MO. He dumps people into the water and has them be torn apart on video by whatever sharks are floating around that section of the ocean. And so you're essentially following the final girl here, his latest victim, who is trying like hell to escape. And she's an awesome character. She's one of those final girls that you just like fist pump in the air because they're just such a badass survivor. Jai Courtney, I almost said Jay Courtney. Jai Courtney is a lot of fun here. I think the bit of gore that we do get, I would have used a lot more. If I was the one making the film, I would have cranked that up a bit. But what we do get here is definitely intense. Like when they're dipping people into the water, like I genuinely was gripping my seat and kind of tensing up, which means that it was effective. Whether they were using stock footage or they were using some CGI to kind of bring the sharks to life, it was one of the better ways I've seen sharks brought to life on film without going just full CGI cartoon. And yeah, it was just a fun time. You know, for somebody that has been ultra critical of movies like this one just gave me a lot of things that I really enjoyed. The romance side of things was really the weakest part for me. You know, that was something where it just kind of felt like something to keep the story going and to have certain conveniences in there about how things are going to happen. Never really was all that bought in on the actual like love or romance between those two characters. But beyond all of that, I just had a great time with this one. It was a nice surprise. It kind of came out of nowhere. And so if you're like me, you really don't care for movies with sharks too much, check this one out. You might really dig it. But coming in at number one for me, easily the best movie of the summer so far, and the film that I would probably say is safe to be in my top 10 by the end of the year, unless we just have one hell of 2025 to look forward to, is F1. And this is a film that really wasn't on my radar much. Of course, I had heard about it. You know, there was a lot of press, a lot of promotion for it. It is an Apple film, so they have a ton of fuck you money to just throw at things like this. But F1 racing movies in general, not really my thing. Of course, there have been some great ones. Just like 2 years ago, Gran Turismo was a big surprise for me, ended up in my top 10. So I went to go check this one out a little bit early with a friend. And what I will say is that this, much like Top Gun Maverick, who there's a lot of the same creative team here making this film, really scratches that itch of those old school summer blockbusters that just made you feel good. You had good, fun characters brought to life by a bona fide movie star, thrilling action sequences, good comedy, a nice, effective little romance in there, a fairly straightforward story that certainly leans on cliches, but in the best, most satisfying way, where you just go, put your money down, sit down, shove popcorn in your face, and have a good fucking time for like 2.5 hours. And sometimes you just need a movie like that. Sometimes you need a movie that's not trying to reinvent the wheel or not trying to make this grand statement about life or society or anything like that. You just want to have a good old-fashioned movie escapism experience. That's what people got from Top Gun Maverick. That's one of the reasons why it just made ass loads of money. I don't think this is going to be nearly as successful as that, but it's the same type of experience for me. And so I walked out of it just smiling ear to ear going, damn, that was a really fucking fun movie. I will watch that again for sure. And I will absolutely watch a sequel, which they're already talking about doing. So, you know, look forward to F2, I guess. Is that what they would call it? But yeah, as a guy who really doesn't like sports and I've never gotten into them, I enjoy a really good sports movie if they're telling a really compelling story, which this one is. Good old fashioned, like, underdog story, and, you know, old dog meets new dog and them trying to fight over the same territory. And again, cliches, things that we've seen before, which will certainly be the main thing that the detractors of this movie will point out as the big flaw, and they're not wrong. But to me, it just kind of leaned on some nostalgia with that. You know, there was something about this that was familiar in a comforting way that I really enjoyed. So, yeah, if you want that good old-fashioned summer blockbuster experience, I think F1 is going to be that movie of the summer for sure. Hopefully there'll be one or two more that I can point out here in July or August. But as of right now, F1, easily my number one film of June 2025. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2025 new release reviews. I'm also going to put a playlist up here of all of these month wrap-ups that I've done so far this year. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything to come in July and August. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.